हाँ नहीं, म्यूट अनम्यूट किया मैंने और मैं अपने फोन से बात कर रही हूँ अभी। तुमको आ रहा है आवाज? चेक 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 चेक। हेलो हेलो, आवाज आ रही है? आवाज आ रही है? आवाज 1 2 3 माइक चेक।
Streaming, but we recorded it on we archived it on YouTube. So it stays later on YouTube.
किसी को नीचे बैठने में तो दिक्कत होगी तो we have chair.
One chair we have.
She the chair. She was very particular.
हाँ ये देखिए मैं
क्या?
ऑन कर दियो हाँ डबल प्रेस यहाँ पर एक सिंगल प्रेस पहले मॉडल में होगा
No, no, I know, but हाँ
बीच में ना बीच में कार्ड So I have prepared some of the notes during the process of drawing, and later on I kind of combine them all together. So it seems sometimes they look all going together. Some paragraph might look some behind them. Images have been integrated part of the world throughout different time and culture. To produce meaning, the image take place that evaluate our symbolic exchange and progression towards the making and unmaking of meaning. The image generate themselves as a meaning. There is a gap between image and meaning that makes their presence alive. This aliveness arrives only via the presentation or representation of meaning into the image. Image and meaning are not a synonym, but have a technical connection in their process of production, from where they become less separate and interdependent. Meaning cannot be meaning cannot be produced by it means it needs to be presented in any manner or medium that is an image. In another way, image is a cast of meaning that materializes itself only to produce its outcome as a meaning. Without meaning, the image becomes open or ambiguous, where meaninglessness turns into experience of abandonment in life. This fear about lack of meaning towards life in this world produce images that produce meaning in our existence. When humans started making images, they touch on something new or experience something extra through the technology of making something affected by boredom of existence. In a general way, when the image was completed, it made it possible to revisit the experience that is embedded into the image. This act of revisiting back to particular experience was the only meaningful experience that humans found or innovated in their own abandoned existence. It is not only the technology of image making that was the cause of experiencing particular repetitive meaning in the image, but humans starving towards the fundamental question that existence asks, who am I? This question arrived at the image of God as a creator of the world. And therefore, religion systemized this existential inquiry of human being, producing technology of belief system where image become not only the proof, but unproof that transcends the religious legitimacy. Therefore, the agent of God functions as a voice of the law and act as a psychoanalytical entity that regulates individual behavior without entering into the material or physical power. The metaphysical playground where Pandit produce images of purity and perform these images only when they create opposite image of it. Purity sustains itself in Hindu philosophy when it defines what is impurity. This same goes with modernity, which produce tribes or indigenous. This opposite or dichotomy of thought can be laid out to multiple movements and counter movements. Images retroactively produce its counter image that nullify its origin at the same time present is at the same time sorry images retroactively produce its counter image that nullify its origin at the same time makes its presence possible. This shows images always accelerate from their own image to sustain their meaning as an identity. The struggle works as a progression of meaning and via production of images, and we stumble upon multiple images. This multiplicity of images becomes schizophrenic, and walking in this progression becomes pathological. The production of image making is generated by various histories, culture, communities, and individuals, but nothing is changed in the process and intention of the image. Each image is talking about its own presence and its own knowledge, becoming a site of ego that prevents the meaning to explore and facilitate the revisit to the spectator into the particular meaning of the image, proposing something very fundamental and crucial that the image works as an apparatus of control. The meaning as a tool to govern human being was staged by the agent of God, and when power shifted from religion to state, which is the shift of term and modern belief system, in this non-movement, when what remains the same here is meaning as a tool, meaning as an apparatus, meaning as a technology to systemize the human existential inquiry into fixed identity, that later become a vehicle to excavate resource and turn into the power regime. Time has a divorced relationship with image. Image rupture to the continuation of time. The image produces stoppage that is continuously moving in time with holding on its own stop. And the image become heavy with time. The more the image is out of time, more it become godlike figure, a mythical one. This imaginary become a source of ideology that spiritualize violence and creates self-consciousness as the only form of identity. This is the reason Mazar and Masjid become a target to overlap with Mandir in our recent governing ideology. The Azan create more restlessness for today's BJP image production. Showing power control is demolishing the mythical, the imaginary, which has more clear image in our mind or more closer in our recognition process. मोहम्मद जुबैर, a victim of Delhi riots, said in his interview, मुझे नहीं मेरी पहचान को मारा गया है उन्होंने मुझसे कुछ बात नहीं की ना ही वो मुझे जानते थे. The recognition process is based on the images. Recognition cannot be completed without the image. The recognition process reads multiple samples as images from where it can recognize them. An image appear as they only talk about their own meaning. The same recipe that I mentioned above, image as apparatus of control, more simply arriving at the particular meaning. Now the recognition also requires a decision making, which image it will select after the samples of images, where we fall into the choice organized by governing ideology. What if the samples of recognition have more open image or image that is not able to recognize by the process of recognition? For example, sometimes our fingerprints will not match to our own samples of fingerprint. The only reason I see is the growth, not only in the sense of change in the body, but growth as the development of meaning. Accepting that the recognition system might not be able to recognize something that is not in the image but exists in its experience. The social media post or mediatic images shows the blur image and gives you an alert when the image is bloody as a violent image. When we see political leaders performing the ritual in the temple and joining the state and religious power together, performing secularism as a modern image, but at the same time dragging the meaning into religion. A religion becomes an infrastructure that accumulates ideology and power. This infrastructure evolved into the site of tourism that can be visited, revisited, and worshipped. As the image is revisiting to the particular experience, the recognition of violence is cancelled here in this image of performing religion as a state power, whereas it creates celebration that mediatic do not want to see. There is more the meaning is doing to human than its regulation, not necessary in the position to produce control, but make it more open like conceptuality. It resonates when one experiences the drawing, not the image. Drawing as a technology of boredom that not rushes to the end result but slows down the destination of its visuality, creates divulgation of thought, an act of drawing synchronized with practice of listening, and who do we listen becomes an important question. Which voice is accessible and facilitated by the apparatus of images, and which voice is not heard is a clear result of hegemonic design. Sometimes not listening become more truthful access to listening and mobilize from where you are thinking, pulling a non voice when drawing proceed itself, drawing as a labor to come out from the image, not only its formal experimentation of visual appearance, but disagreement with image meaning. These are the points which come up with while doing this work. Somehow, right now, I have managed to sum up these notes and words all together. This, yeah, but later on, now I kind of sum up this separate paragraph. Sometimes I write one line also. So I wanted to have some sort of simple one chunk of paragraph where I so it needs to be create some linear sort of but it's not something which is chronological in the process. It's just random. Also, recent thoughts about image. I wanted to talk about and read about also and write about also the selection, um, where I started in very simple code, the looking at violent images. But later on, it becomes so open for me that I was not able to um, directly mention in my notes here that the very specific violent images in India since last 2 3 years. Um, it's some sort of destruction images, I can say, but as I said, no, this performance of secularism I see as a some can where the mediatic not able to see as a violent image. So the idea is more open for me right now, as I was also discussing with friends. There is some response also.
Filmmaking, there is always this debate that if you have a violent image, you're seeing it again, editing room, see it again and again. You take it to the film, how, how to show that you're seeing it again and again.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that the image doesn't stay like that.
Right, right.
How to take that?
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
always a very complicated.
yeah.
Acquiring meaning
Um,
or external meaning,
mm,
add there.
mm,
That that's what drawing draws.
yeah. Yeah. I was relating with this. I mean, dividing become banal in terms of this kind of Instagram experience where you track this images, this kind of continuous bombarding of this image becomes a lot of loses its meaning, this kind of repetition of these images um, indirectly, this kind of allowing protected ignorance kind of this image becomes some sort of yeah, it's part of the everyday life. That sense is also become ignorance, acceptance. The definition of violence becomes
Because when you're saying this repetition of images, it is saying to protect that indifference what it means. So no, if you're editing, I mean, you have a very violent image and you're editing it into a narrative, into a film, but your encounter with the image is multiple, many times. Because like editing room, you see an image 1,000 times. To even make sense of it, how it will join. That 1,000 times is a very tough encounter to bring to the film. And I think very few filmmakers achieve
mm,
that. That came up with the Alan Deneca Night and Coffee. That came up with that. Does Rene shock you and anesthetize you, or he is able to show his own impact of the image? It's a kind of a problem of an image, especially for people who are making, who are in the practice of making. It's a big problem because reception is in the making. Externally both सकते हो. Yet I'm just trying to say that you can't say that for the image acted I was very surprised, I was shocked. But then I'm bringing to you, what am I bringing? That relationship, what it becomes very tricky. So like Harun Farooqui, a method he tried to withdraw slowly over his filmic career. He tried to withdraw his voice completely and went to captioning and writing and not to show the violence but write the violence. Image said he wanted to take it out of the image because he could not deal with how to bring it in. So it's a different aesthetic. I think we are a generation more facing that.
I was actually connecting this to the three videos over there. these drawings as in comparison to say seeing these images. Uh, and that whole, I mean, that duration of just watching this image build up, like I'm kind of trying to think of what this, looking at this violent image multiple times, but then you're like, as a viewer, you're kind of just looking at these marks or gestures that are kind of slowly building up layer by layer. Um, and then there's this scratch mark. And I think that scratch mark is doing something in terms of shifting this kind of final image that is produced. Like the final image doesn't is not what stands in, it doesn't stay in my mind when I see that as compared to this. Um, so for me, this opens out a lot in those videos that you made. Huh? The process of making the image, the drawing.
There is this friend, George's Perec. He wrote this book where he says it's time to exhaust, an attempt to exhaust a corner in Paris. So he would sit and would write, make an inventory of what all he would see. So, but he would name it as if he's exhausting the place and the image, what all he's seeing. So, can that be seen like, is it an attempt like this repetition of images coming again and again in all different forms? Is it an attempt to exhaust the image, exhaust the effort while looking at the image? I mean, so sometimes it's not like every time that same experience with him, sometimes become more technical also. It's developing very much. It's not always and not in the mode of what image is about. Sometimes I'm also looking at uh, just the process of drawing, where I'm not necessarily only thinking about the making of image, travel around with multiple things. Where I think um, I don't know, but where it tries to attempt as a final idea. Um, but I reach towards the final outcome, which is some sort of rendering of the reference image which I'm trying to.
These reference images are from social media.
Yeah, not only social media, but stock images,
Stock.
Google search images,
So,
or some articles.
so the keywords that you find use, what happens to this?
Internet image, I say, huh?
You use keywords to find them.
Yeah.
So keywords, what is the status of those keywords
So
in your thinking? Like what is the
yeah, yeah. I mean, I started with Instagram basically, where this images coming from the news. Then later I moved to Shine Bug page, Instagram Shine Bug. Then later I moved to search. When I search Delhi riots, I search CA protest, search, do search. So these kind of terms and
like 2 years back if you had searched Delhi riots, you would have got a very different set. You would have got very violent images, but very different set. The 84 would have kept on down.
yeah,
Now that has got drowned. Now it's a leakage. 84 is a leakage into the present. So the present search takes over. That's why I was wondering, see the leakage at search, if you find some the keywords giving other memories of the search.
Yeah, they do. If you still type Delhi riots 20, get the argument from Delhi, Bombay, car riots. So the imagery I am discussing is the what sort of aesthetic also comes, not necessarily in context of Delhi, but in result we see. But somehow some selection I end up towards this particular activity.
There are two things here. One is that you know, like image as likeness and image as substance. This is an older philosophical problem from Plato onwards these days. So Plato actually talked about image as substance. That's why he kind of said that it is public, not image making. Because image is pushing people away from truth. Because it is claiming substance, but it has no substance. But now, if you look at in 4th century AD, a Neoplatonic philosopher like Plotinus, he brings the idea of image as likeness. Image is not about substance. Image is actually something lead to substance. Image is something that produces likeness and lead to, it may lead to substance. So that conflict about the image, even today inform us the way we feel like, even though we are image culture and reality is image, whatever we say, I think the fundamental question that we are still struggling is this question. The substance of the image and the likeness. I think that is where that I think you may be able to kind of push your argument. Because the image is not produced to relieve it from freedom. Image is an externalization of life. It's not. It's not necessarily about people actually made images to encounter what we know as boredom. So images are something that produce as external clues. That external substance or not, that is the likeness, I would require substance. That is where the complication, that's where the entire iconoclasm and iconophilia with. That, even modernism to, goes back to Greek, it actually, the driving force is here, the substance and the likeness. So if you take that as a kind of starting point, that and something like Benjamin Franklin. Again, I'm going to kind of interrupt my own argument with the Benjamin's reading about Reichenthal's film on Hitler. So what he is saying is that even though the image is trying to establish the substance to what Hitler as an image, the entire movie's project is to produce substance to Hitler as an image. Hitler ruled well through his image. But what technology does, according to Benjamin, is that even though the character actually finally claim and say that Germany is Hitler, Hitler is Germany, through the image itself, what happens is that the technology, the camera is able to penetrate through that claim. Camera has, because camera is not, even if apparatus, it is not controlled by a human eye. It also reveals some kind of an optical unconscious of the images. So in that sense, every image actually within itself actually carries its own bit rate. So once we actually kind of say that in an image inherently violent, it's a problematic statement. That violent, is the representation of the violence or the violence of the image. So even a violent image that's circulated in a particular time produces something, another time produces something else altogether. It is often contradictory to the images they are circulation. So that happens because this fluidity or the flexibility or the not flexibility or the impossibility of limiting an image. Because image cannot hold itself the substance. It is not to say that image came into existence only through interpretation. That's also not true. Only through meaning. It also came into existence through, other kinds of sensorial. You need to say sound is an image. It's not that sound is not an image. Not the image we today talk about image, but the beauty or the dynamics of the image is that it is always incomplete. It's always, uh, you know, uh, porous in that sense. Even though it is framed in a rectangle or a square format or our own ideological framework, it always bleeds inside. So that is where I think like Karan Faruqi or people who really thought about image. Or even if you look at Megan Fox, that movie itself, actually we can see that how it talks about the meaning is not in the image itself. It is actually the intervals. It is in the in the gaps. It is in the coming together of it. Not necessarily in terms of juxtaposition or complementing, but it's the impossibility of limiting them. There is certain ways in which it cannot. It will build to something. I think that is the potential I can see, seeing your work, because the actual, like the drawing, you draw something from something, an image or an actual world, an actual event, you are on witness, as a witness you are drawing. That became a prompt. That is not not holding the truth. Because you are holding that book and you are holding it, and you are actually kind of in different places you are holding. So the image is not anymore that inheriting that, inheriting that in itself. It is actually like open. It is drawing out. It's whatever is drawing in, actually you are also drawing out. So that would become much more interesting actually when you show the constructedness of the image itself. The things that, how this image came into existence. Yeah. It's a random choices that you make. It's also like, it's also certain ways of actually exposing our own unconscious. Because these are not like, even if it is a very academic drawing, there are these random decisions what make an image a drawing or an image, its effectiveness. The randomness of that, the randomness is what really make the image, even the most constructed image, powerful, powerful being, what they can have. But the randomness is something that, so I see that three videos there in which we are showing that how this image came into existence. These are choices that you make, you remove, erase. But that is not possible the other image is a palimpsest. We can actually kind of, can actually like see that you are making change. What happens really that the image came alive, even though it's a drawing, in a very different, very spectral. The life actually it accumulates not through its vitality in terms of its substance, but its performativity. So I think that in a room actually in that sense actually produces to me something very interesting, because it not necessarily consciously or intentionally, it try to capture the complexity of. But so I listen to your writing, I feel that you are fixing it. That you are trying to fix it in a particular tradition of actually meaning making, or refusing to make meaning. I think that is not the way I see it. Can disagree with me, but I feel that the work actually produces something else too. But when you are framing it, I feel that it is a way of fixing that ambiguity.
No, I think of another point is that agree with it. Maybe with this works, I'm also looking at distribution and the way I kind of place the frame, the drawing frame within the empty space of the room. I can also circulate this friends in the city, Chatwala and Channel. This kind of idea I have experience. So Bombay have newspaper which goes with school, like on surface where this media paper the news comes. Uh, so that incorporates again very different opinions and then so I'm talking to the people who have this kind of and that's how thinking the fold which I have um, and maybe some object or something will be here in that and it passes to the city how it will be encountered. So in that way it's like it's the first time I'm kind of I also wanted to distribute things here. So not only so I committed a couple of things. He's come as Zeke now. I wanted to discuss this once from my walls of cave and people. So I was struggling with the video that and on YouTube, thinking what YouTube terms, how to draw something, writing like one point perspective, how to draw one point perspective, how to draw portrait, and selecting some images from different and from there, the terminology what YouTube uses has become something important for me. When it comes to like the final result of the point, like one video is something where I'm holding within the city. But then now I want to also do some other information drawings. So yeah, this is the idea of offset print I came up. In some sort of percha is a kind of loose paper. But the result which I actually come up with is still something which is very nice and
Interesting idea.
no, for me also like apart from the image making itself, like the video of the drawing really looks like a tutorial video.
Yeah.
Like and that makes it like or even like something like this which is supposed to go in finding something like this in a chart. Kind of you're buying something and you get a picture. So that like something to do with where you encounter the image, whether it is on a highway where someone is holding a book and showing that image to you, or you're looking for a one point perspective tutorial and you encounter the image, or you're eating chat and I think that's where something interesting really begins to happen. Like, apart from the image itself or the rendering of the image. Yeah, yeah. So it's not like the work is not stopped here. It starts from the idea of distribution, and then the encounter.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is something that different kinds of materiality and different kinds of reality that in this person. It anticipates different kinds of encounters. I didn't see it as a tutorial, for instance. I saw it as a very interesting way of uh, drawing attention to, you know, you know, something that has happened very recently in history. In the sense that the way you have kind of drawn and erased and produced certain kind of effect to it and so on and so forth. To me, it is just more like producing a new kind of materiality to the reality that was so close to me, but it was non-tangible. It is like something that I can only think about that image as a glint. I couldn't manage to do anything. But in certain sense, actually produces that a different kind of tangibility to that moment.
No, it's quite very interesting. Image as a good. I struggle with them. The kind of images where it's coming from, and the kind of my distance and my privilege to just expand this image also gives me some sort of struggle time. And kind of
So I see that that's the way actually, for instance, urban planning itself happens like that. Even in the most planned and the most unplanned. The way that you are showing, how a building is built, added, erased, removed. These are the ways in which our infrastructural imagination itself functions. There is something that I found very interesting because, especially if you are showing it as alone or something, it can be tutorial. But once it comes to the a particular combination of things, then I cannot see it as anymore as a
yeah, but here I'm not saying the tutorial and all. But the side of YouTube, I wanted to add that context also here. How the YouTube list and the searching engine of YouTube also where maybe accidentally this comes. Even sometimes I share my students also how to draw portrait. Give this kind of links to them sometimes. Some other discussion also opens there, which is not anticipated. Yeah, this I just started from it's on YouTube only. Full screen and
Full screen.
so when the video is ending, you see the next video. There you see the guide. You just scroll and use the mouse.
कुछ अनएंटिसिपेटेड अगर तुम्हारा पूरा वर्क का बेसिस है तो तुमने जो लिखा है उसमें तो है ही नहीं
या
और पूरा स्टैटिक बेसिस जो अनएंटिसिपेटेड
लिखने का थोड़ा सा ऐसा हो रहा है कि आई डोंट नो राइटिंग इज समथिंग तो पकड़ में नहीं आ रहा है कि कुछ छूट रहा है ऐसे कुछ हो रहा है मे बी आई एम कुछ नेगलेक्ट करना है मुझे वो स्ट्रगल जो कह रहा हूँ मैं मे बी आई शुड ट्राई सम maybe this one line which I'm writing now is more authentic for me or maybe more उसमें ज़्यादा रिजल्ट आ रहा है और जब मैं उसे linear कर दे रहा हूँ then maybe that kind of scatteredness which I'm writing in between in the process वो मिस हो जा रही है when I'm kind of making it a kind of paragraphical.
That's okay.
I don't know. I'm writing. Apologies for interrupting. I have to go. Thank you for today. Bye. 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 Bye.
Writing is also another form of externalization. Like speaking is another form of remote saying. So I think I don't see a big problem in it. And I'm just saying that, especially if you bring the question of history and how image of gender, I think we need to also think about it in a much more conceptual plane than merely drawing history as a background. That's the thing I was trying to say. There is different ways of doing it. So
Writing is also visible very similarly to doing. Like it's written in that way. Even you say there were like notes and then you was something like that. Something is undoing and then you repeating it. It's the process of thinking which is.
But this is not the only place where writing appears. Right? Writing appears even in
Yeah.
the book and things like that.
So more writing कैसे लगता है?
No, it's on a very different order. If you, I mean, the writing which is, I mean, there's writing which was painted, like, I mean, then there is also like little notes I saw, and those are in Marathi, so I couldn't really make out, but maybe you can say a little bit about what those were.
So book was my regular diary where the drawings overlap. Sometimes they appear, but yeah, it's not like something writing as a but say daily to-do list also deadline है application engagement वैसे भी activities में
पर मैं एक चीज सोच रहा था कि जैसे मुझे सब काम देखे ऐसा नहीं इसके लिए लिखा है क्योंकि आई फेल्ट कर वीडियो हैव बीन राइटिंग अबाउट your own questions about image making, representation, history and all. So there is one mode in which often a lot of practitioners get into feel calm and then they want to write about getting image. And then there is another way of writing where actually in writing you write image actually. Not drawing it, but there's a little freedom that you there because then you are not writing about the image necessarily. But in the mode of writing, there are multiple ways of them. बहुत सारे तरीके भी खुल जाते हैं. It's not clear. ये जो तरीका है जो kind of एक तरीके का एक पेपर राइटिंग है ऐसे लिखने का तरीका है वो एक तरीका है नॉट से पर अगर वो कहीं अटक रहा है तो maybe when it comes to try other modes of writing.
yeah poetry is quite nice actually not sure but there is some very interesting stuff
तो when to
Just
take
like
writing is writing
अभी ऐसा है ना कि मेरे ऐसा कि जिस
negative space, breathing space opens a lot to do some intervention. पीछे आगे
You can print your parts of your life, your part of your text in the back. That may just make the writing become little more irreverent towards your writing. So allows that movement.
जिसमें मैंने ऐसा भी सोचा था कि अभी आप जब like circulation is something that you are thinking about, you know, seriously printer के साथ भी काम किया है, अभी तो मैंने उस zine है सब सोच रहे हो, but वो एक तरीका है, पर जैसे अभी आप जब बता रहे थे कि वो आप वेंडर्स को देना चाहते हो या ना maybe you want to then रिकॉर्ड हैं कि क्या हो रहा है वहाँ पर मैं जब ये मुझे हिंदी टेक्स्ट करता है तो मैं जब आप सोच रहे थे कि वेंडर्स को लेना चाहेंगे तो मैं सोच रहा था कि जैसे ये बिल्डिंग में जब मैं एंटर हुआ या मेरा फैमिली what if you make it a I'm just thinking what if it is made into a rough book क्योंकि गणित करने के लिए सब बच्चे करते हैं और अगर ये मैं जैसा करूँ तो इसका बुक बना के पूरा एक मॉडल जैसा जो दिया गया है बच्चे maybe you can think about what age group also you want to interact with they might not even interact with it they might interact with it but मैं भी सोच रहा हूँ कि अगर आपके लिए और ये बिल्डिंग में अगर वो बच्चे हैं तो there is a still possibility है कि एक सर्जरी पॉइंट शायद आप बात भी हो पाएंगे उनसे या तो ये क्यों गया इसको मैं इसके या मैं इसमें गणित कर रहा हूँ तो क्या हो सकता है वो फेल ही हो जाए उसका but there is that conversation that person because it's not कि आप दूर करके रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हो कि वो एंजल उसके साथ क्या कर रहा है but there's a little association from the very immediate surrounding.
I found interesting that you are somebody is thinking about image, and even as an afterthought about what one is doing, not necessarily about a random thoughts came and writing a line, but to construct that thought, discursive is also very important. So I'm not saying that that is a problem. I think that it's a very important. All artists should do. You may really read, want to read it, keep it in your hotel, listen in mind. What you are doing is I found very interesting. Because you are making it discursive. Right? Random thought, you are trying to make it into some discourse. I was just saying methodologically it will be useful for you to construct in a different way, but not to abandon the project. No, that is very important. Yeah.
Ambitious. You have to first expect to be reverential. I think that's the training in art that we have to be reverential towards the place and a lot of freedom to the practice. And then that freedom we try to compensate away. So I think Santosh just picked that thing very nicely. That freedom to answer that. That would be fun. Go more ballistic on it.
But I mean, there is a little weight that this image somehow has been, उसमें अगर दूसरी image के साथ deal करो, then that kind of drawbacks we need to think about them extraordinary abuse. What is to get towards the image? That is something which we will also talking about. The images के साथ काम कर रहे हैं कितना उसको खींचना है there is some sort of decision so sometimes that becomes very heavy sometimes I try to loosen it up but yeah I think writing the drawing part which I wrote and the idea of thinking about image is very intentional for me and the interpretation was drawing as a can so that is something essential. So I'm clear about it and I'm ready to disagree with this. Maybe the formation I can do and maybe create more
वो थोड़ा सा लर्निंग में भी करना चाहिए.
There is this form that you did, which is making us sit in front of an, because it's a lecture performance form. You are turning it into a physical spatial project, making us sit in front of an image which is kind of mostly black, it's not carbon. It's a suit. So it's a kind of has a morning structure to it, but it's not that. Because you take a theoretical leap onto the history of the image. So it does not allow you to emotionally stay on it. That form is beautiful. But I think that form you have to practice a little. You have to give a more variation. So that you understand, take it some. Because that what you have done is, in terms of its structure as an artistic form, is very bold. In the sense that तुम्हें लगता है कि तुम कुछ मॉर्निंग में बैठा और तुमने शिफ्ट कर दिया
वो वहां से शुरू हो जाते हैं बाहर इतनी सारी
So your first impulse is also bad sound. It's like something.
The image has a height also.
Height है मतलब क्या
Even
सियापा
there are
वाला.
blank spaces in between. These spaces are also there.
So
Image is not stretched towards the paper. If you see all images are black, all big images. Excellent different. There are white spaces in between which gives you थोड़ा white spaces थोड़ा कुछ image थोड़ा छोटा कर दिया है.
So that I like that, if you have switched off the light and red, it would have been very different. If you have taken to the morning, I'm thinking this television lighting is also interesting. So as a form, it is very interesting with this kind of flat white line sitting, and you're reading very seriously. And you start hearing him, and I thought it was a personal journey. Ulta, to go into a civilizational speed. That journey was very nice. But I kind of got कि वो गया नहीं है, जाना चाहिए. So the leap was very good. But
Then maybe it also tries to deal with this question of weight. Like somehow this form seems to try and do that. Like this question that you are dealing with for the past few months since you're working with these images. Some kind of experience, lack of experience, or distance. But something about like showing these images like this and sitting and reading and talking, but then what you're talking is not the moment. Talking is the theoretical leap. That's very. That position is clear for me. It's not like accidentally.
that part is very nice. So like it's like very nice. Nice is the wrong word. It's very challenging in my mind. Because the temperature was the morning, and I was thinking as partner like yes, yeah, and then suddenly it changed, and I really kind of evoked a different ambition altogether.
But sometimes when these images are circulated through media, and when we are talking the substance and lightness, lightness, this conflict, but the direct impact of this image is where it falls. Like these images go in this discussion, they act as a very clear declaration of some particular attempts happening through this event, where this kind of inquiry towards the image kind of falls down and direct representation, where the history of image making is struggling to find out this or this kind of topics that history comes, but same time what mass production goes or mediation goes, where I'm thinking this circulation, idea of circulation, doing very opposite of it. It's very clear intention, and the reading of this image is also reflecting that. So the thought of this inquiry goes down and in a discussion with mass culture, mass production, circulation.
See, I don't know.
This is about
2013 या 14 का data मैं देखा था, मैं आपको update रही 14 billion images was produced that year. So, I think you can find the data.
Produced in what?
Circulated.
Circulated.
You can just check this book called How to See the World by Nicholas Musso. He full account of like in 2 years time or something that produced actually more image than that Indian history was produced.
And then it fell down just for 2 years.
No, but now there is massive machine generated image nobody sees also. So if you calculate all that, we are in the unseen in that way. There is more images than human eye can ever make. It's like the astronomical data. There are so much data that next 50 years में उसका समझ नहीं आएगा. Image has also reached that point. Same with all the data. So the artistic intervention is basically to give it a different way outside the excess that we all experience.
The flow.
So you produce a different punctuation to the flow to make us kind of, here the frame is a different thing, it's a parenthesis. It's like a parenthesis.
But ये चीज़ एक बड़ी interesting होती है, the kind of family groups, WhatsApps या ऐसे, या जैसे जो Instagram and all this social media is full of these images, family groups उसको narrow down करते हैं, वो same image भी circulate होती रहती है, वो 10 image ही उस group में image or caption same circulate होती है. So it's very interesting to work to promote of course, some of these things in these groups. Same intensity of again and again and again you are seeing. मैं 10 दिन के लिए होगा वो उससे ज़्यादा चलेगा नहीं कि उसके बाद another images put on. Good morning आएगा ये सब आएगा उसके बाद फिर से शुरू होगा. But that is something I find very interesting about the one side is this bombardment of image which is created, which is happening, and the other side how it is regulated also in certain platforms. कहाँ किस age group में तू जा रहा है वो चीजें कैसे काम करेगी. So I find it very fascinating also. कैसे वो ये भी है ये भी कम भी कर रहे हैं कहाँ कम कर रहे हैं. It's almost like मैं गाड़ी चलाते हुए कहाँ बेचते हैं कहाँ कम कर रहे हैं.
Because like image का बड़ा interesting है. New ecology of image है ना. It is interesting. We go to the image. See, image don't come to you. If you see there is less billboards, there is less writing on the wall. That is all prohibited. Urban ecology है ना. There is not a prohibition on public image. But when we go to the image, this idea of the bombardment, right? You can switch off the social media, won't be bombarded. But bombardment is like it is there. Like you feel you are tracing yourself into it. So it's a very interesting, like you volunteer yourself to the bombardment. It's a very different ecology than the ecology of say 80s onwards, which was the ecology of bombarding you and capturing you in the image, like surrounded by it. Then in politics, they banned circulation of image. Window commission, the whole attempt in universities, they did that. Everywhere, the surfeit of images was taken away from public life to produce a different ecology of image. उसमें ना consent बहुत तगड़ा है. And that's where this artistic project becomes very interesting because it's the act of working on the image that you have chosen, you have taken care of, you have acted on, and that space is fascinating. And this got to उस zone में जाना ना वो because we choose our own compartment. We search it. I know I'm obsessive about it. I go and search it, but I know that I'm doing. It is there, and it's और दिल्ली राइट केस में बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. Not having the image is the sign of conspiracy. If you don't have the image, that means you are मीटिंग किया तुमने इसका इमेज नहीं है, suspicious act किया. So the image is a sign of innocence.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. It's a little bit bizarre if you think of the juridical form within which image is being read. An image always, image gets given, the image is always impacted by the juridical. What is news or what is seen.
Image is very violent.
Image is always impacted by the juridical.
But then it has a clear effect, like what Chandra is saying about the ambiguity within the image. What Mohit is trying to ask is like, do you think in the production of these kinds of images there is still an ambiguity? Because it has a clear ideology, made created for particular purpose and all. So then why not create in another circulation what is done? We should also be very clear. See, even if you look at something like WhatsApp, separated images, there are two ways it works. One is like symbolic images. Other one is evidential image. Yeah. And how you can transform an evidence, image into an evidence. So you actually add something to it. So once you circulate, so that the actual image, photographic image, that in modernity that become an evidence in the courtroom itself because of the neutrality of the images, the camera. But do you think that this is they have a clear distinction? No, I don't say that even in WhatsApp, what we are accessing is that an image or a text. For instance, how text actually appeared evidentiality is the is through 20 capital. Like you believe what you read in the newspaper. If you because it came in the news, there will be some substance to it because there's some authenticity to it. So it actually comes through looking at the authenticity of the letter itself, the word itself. So what happens in this is something Paul Gilroy actually talks about as the productive illiteracy, or productive ignorance. One of the words he used for it. How in the age of WhatsApp and social media, he I don't know the exact terminology. It's like uh, it's like how do you use that image of authenticity and evidentiality of the newspaper to create a fake news, a fake. What you draw is a historical image of something, a historical memory that you store about something, an old media, old evidentiality of an image before the digital age and so on. So I think there is something very interesting to think about that.
Forum changes are the image changes. Like lynching images are classic American lynching images. It can be circulated, give them. Even Christmas days.
Yeah.
Now if you
Price for the
think about it now, you will be like smashed if you even try. So it's like forum change over. Specific forum will change your image, but substance or likeness potential has been expressed in a different way. But, it has become completely another image. So you will have this. सबसे अच्छा divorce के बाद family album, marriage album का I've seen it in the friends. Just this all legitimation get buried under some. It doesn't get thrown, it gets buried. Because forum change, the logic of the image is changed. Forum change, maybe the grandchild will take it up. They find that tension and sort of make a story out of it. But the thing is that forum change हो गया change. Otherwise, bedside में लगा के breath. So it's like that. So the forum changed that one. Taking it to different forum, different arena. आदमी तो blur हो गया. हमारा पता ही नहीं हमारा arena क्या है, blur. Hovers around and then we are trying to have that associative discussion to understand our arena. Otherwise, we just blank out. That's the associative world we have at least need most.
There are memes. So memes. That is also something else. तो एक ही इमेज एक ही तरीके की इमेजेस को लोग अलग अलग तरीके से यूज करके इंटरप्रेट कर रहे हैं.
Words change.
Yeah. मीम्स बनाने के apps हैं and you actually find अलग अलग type के pictures and then you can add content to it according to your ideas.
The image generator.
Yeah, there are memes.
Text file आता है, you add.
तो उसमें basically
faces change करो, थोड़ा कुछ करो, उसका faces करो, थोड़ा meme बनाओ.
वो भी आ जाता है and according to your ideas. For example मुझे excitement वाला चाहिए. So if I type excitement, then I get certain kind of images about excitement, and then I can choose the image and I can add text to it. And it is very easy to create memes now. So any person, anybody can create an image now.
The bar that the app is how is it identifying the area of excitement? What image does it give you when you say excitement or when you say something? Keyword like yes,
हाँ, keywords उसमें आ जाते हैं. Then you can get image according to that.
Some of the most like sophisticated images of violence you get to see in like
Marvel movie.
CGI, like this kind of blast or some kind of destruction, debris, something like what you see in kind of reportage or post-riot reportage image. Yeah, the things are kind of dark walls and something kind of blast. So you get to see it in like high definition in a Marvel movie, in slow motion, where this thing is you're kind of watching it explode and things like that. So that's also curiosity then in the sense of like something like especially when we are talking about unseen or something like you are kind of volunteering yourself to an image, then there is a technique which is producing essentially like fake images of violence or images of simulated images of violence. And then you're at the same time like you're looking at evidence or you're starting with images that are being circulated on social media as evidence of some act and taking them as starting point and then drawing something else out of it. So that's something like curious in terms of because I'm curious if this drawing would have started with a generic image of violence like a Marvel movie image of violence.
That's what linkage.
I think that's
They're providing a little linkage to
Which organ?
But if Marvel movie with the violence hai, it's like there's something very panoramic about it. There's something very wide angle, like wholesome almost, like you consume it. Yeah.
No, but only
When
it's
there are so
controlled
much.
by.
Yeah. No, but I'm trying to kind of. I feel like it's a little different. I feel like there's something about the frame, and even though they're journalistic images, there is a certain, it's not necessarily zooming in, they just seem to be cropped. Not just here, even the kind of the sketchbook in the background of the streets, the video work. Like this still frame, I feel like this leakage is happening in when I kind of compare it, this image of violence, the difference is happening in this the way that it's being framed
No,
as compared to the Marvel kind of this very
frame to Mohit bhi change bhi karna hai.
pleasurable violence.
Like there is this video of a cinema. It's a very interesting book. See, right? So उसमें एक image है bomb गिरता है. उसमें this sun just forget it. But it describes the bomb opening as a flower. I think read it. It's like a aesthetic that will bomb गिरता है as a flower. That is beautifully described. वो पढ़ के ना, but it's a it's an extremely beautiful vision because you could see the landscape completely different. The balance is completely gone. But you realize that marble goes on this time that almost living laid out. That's the image you are looking for. It's the panoramic beauty that you see completely say, kya bomb gira.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Actually, I would like it as a, but it's really like these And wherever you take that as an example, the addiction of the cinematic to the war image. Cinema propels its own history to the war.
Will it be seen? The entire will be seen.
Interesting. It's all interesting. I imagine. Fragmenting. It's a downside.
I mean, this is something like in terms of thinking over and coming from the performance and some interest towards the biometrics, the image essential to measure the
Biometrics, the image is gone. It's a digital data. It's a destruction of the image to the data.
yeah, but also extracting the numbers,
Yeah, it is extracting a digital
information, but also going into, of course, the judiciary, the image evidence. Um, these are the areas and
जुडिशरी के इमेज के बारे में कुछ हवा नहीं है अभी अभी तो विजडम की बात कर रहा है एक्सपीरियंस की बात यू सी द इमेज द आइडिया ऑफ द वीडियोग्राफर एट द स्ट्रीट लेवल द इमेज एंड द जुडिशियल प्रोनाउंसमेंट उसमें गैप देखोगे ना द इमेज इज थ्रेटनिंग images become this kind of indexical violently indexical image के बारे में ज्यादा वर्ड है नेक्स्ट किसी ने देखा ही होगा
what you're saying the forum, no? When
the forum changes the language of it. The judicial pronouncement is about experience and wisdom, not about the status of the image.
How is
The
it?
Supreme Court has the position here that there should be experience judge. It will go to the idea of an experienced judge जिसका wise wisdom से हम सुनेंगे. So what happens is the forum do not working on the language of evidence. Because you know, while trying to work on that with the evidence, they did away with the evidence. They've done that in 30 years of judicial process. That's the forum. Well, we are living in this world that the tension of the image is multiplying in ways that are from indexical kind of phantom to unseen. There's a huge world, and the tension that likeness or substance, the tension is getting torn and refixed and torn. And forums are basically dealing and reworking those tensions.
I was thinking of this Twitter bots commissioned by Amazon to dissuade workers to basically spread anti-unionizing propaganda. Right? So these Twitter bots will have profile pictures. These profile pictures will be images of people that are generated by an AI. So this person doesn't exist, but their images exist. Right? And so it like to identify if person in the image is real or not requires some other kind of reading of the image, which is it's something kind of technical, but in a slightly like it shows something like the shape of one eyebrow over another, or whether one if like AI often generates faces with wearing glasses, and often like a common mistake they do is that or the AI would do is एक आपकी एक फ्रेम है एक स्टाइल है फ्रेम और दूसरी आपकी अलग फ्रेम है like one side will have like this kind of frame and other side will have like frameless glass and then you can see that there is AI generated. So these kind of things come up in terms of
Some kind of new kind of forensic.
new kind of forensic appears in the sense of even trying to read the evidentiary quality of the image of whether it is real or not. So in that sense also I'm trying to think about like starting point of an image and then drawing something out. What?
This is also changing the reading of the image. As the image suggests, like no substance.
Interestingly, this is something that you draw from stock image. That, but it is not stock image in a conventional sense. These are also marked by a part of the Lee ranks, part of again the stock images. So not a stock image of violence in that sense, But then what happens if you work with an image that claims to have some kind of a referentiality to an actual event that is not even historical, it's contemporary, that is our own time.
Yeah.
How do you, I'm asking a question, I was thinking, seeing this, that, but there are also certain styles that we kind of, by transforming it continuously in various forms and providing possibilities of multiple kinds of encounters of this image. You are also constantly saying that these are not, isolated events that these are like, sometimes like omnipotent and omnipresence in our life. In the lesson, something like what Laclau says us from the particular to something that is universal, something that like even we are dealing with a particular image, or transforming that thing into something that is much more about violence than merely a violence that has occurred in a particular time. I think, but that transformation has to be thought very carefully. I'm trying to say because that easy transformation from a particular to universal is also equally problematic. So I think that what are the multiple checkpoints an artist can actually kind of think about in that transition. I think this is one of the moment I feel that for that, for the checkpoint to think about that transition. I think there are multiple checkpoints that artist has to create.
Yeah. But I mean, this question falls into this kind of struggle with talking about the generic idea of event, which we can say violent, but also dragging it from the particular. So there is some sort of burden. You have to kind of deal with it. Maybe that's making me more aware about this hardware particular. But just bringing this image front of the group became a one position for me right now. And don't want to give this towards me. I want to give it towards the whatever space I'm sharing with. Um, just not ignoring them, but bringing them here with whatever intervention I can develop. So that sort of intention, which gives me this kind of retrospection towards very carefulness to this, but also opens my ability to see it from more distance, close. So that sort of position I am doing right now. It's happening. Uh,
I was thinking about, especially for people, I think, all of us who've been trained as artists. Every time one confronts images which are, in quotes, beautifully done, like really, it's when you see these drawings, there's no doubt that they are very beautifully done, despite the subject matter or whatever it is. There is something that the way it is handled. So, also you kind of start thinking about, I'm also thinking about Kathy Golditz's drawings. They are so powerful and at the same time they're so attractive. So there is a way in which the form kind of tries to also drag you away into this mm, sense of pleasure and beauty. And then you're horrified because when you're looking at the subject matter or the things that these drawings are not representing but thinking about, you're horrified at your own kind of reaction at this simultaneity of the attractiveness and the. So each time I come across such drawings, this is a question for me, and I'm not saying that. It remains a question. So, but the forum that you, like Jivesh was saying, that you produce, kind of veers me away from just staying with that, uh, that either guilt or the same. So, that I find interesting that we are still sitting around and we are going, we are talking about it and we are thinking, why each of us carries this guilt because this is happening every day these days. Every day you open the newspaper, every day you confront these images and you feel like you're not doing anything. And yeah, but sometimes it just leaves you feeling.
Gives a passage.
Um,
It's like something beyond that morning melancholy dichotomy. Like,
So
something very important.
I also remembering name sings and see the rich child singer. UD में कुछ साल पहले 2019 में when he had come, something very interesting he was doing. So he was performing. So he took that performance to a certain level, and there's a way in which they are performing. Then suddenly he will stop, and he will start speaking about what he is or event. Then he said very clearly to me, I think about students, so they said my address is also to students. I don't want you to get into the beauty of how can this be.
don't get carried away.
Don't get carried away. Same with the baat karte hain. So that kind of thing is like if you build it, then you break it. If you build it, break it.
That is not there in the Marvel bodies.
No.
And you're
Immersive.
you're not getting it, you just eat it.
नहीं वहाँ क्योंकि वो क्रिएटिव पर वो इस तरह से काम कर रहा है कि that is inviting you inside. It is taking you inside, and after all you also want to see left side, but little bit you want to be there also. So, but it is also that more than Marvel aesthetic. It works like this. But I thought all of us are what we are doing here, what he is doing here is and continuously stopping us to totally getting into that. So, इसमें this Avatar movie, उसमें when this character the main the hero is उसकी body होती है फिर उसका एक image होता है तो उसकी देखा created in there is a very interesting moment in that job because he also cannot, he does not have leg, so that memory, he cannot walk, he is on wheelchair. Then he gets this body, created body. So first time he walks and he is not able to walk, and then he starts running. So that so he is also himself seeing himself through this image and also from a different height now. Because that image is also very tall, all these people are also very tall. So I often find this that shot very interesting that even the movie I dislike a lot of problems of it. But that moment of transforming your body itself into that image, and through that image you are seeing all the world. But it feels suddenly you बहुत एकदम गिर जाते गिरने वाले. But then he practices little bit, then again it goes into that movement.
Practice के पहले.
Practice के पहले just practice के पहले there is a disbalance. Yeah.
तुम्हारा जो डायरी it is महाराष्ट्र में लिखा गया था
हाँ.
बैकग्राउंड आई थिंक मराठी में लिखा हुआ है how was the reaction because the images are from Delhi.
तो जब मैं ऐसे बुक खोल के खड़ा हूँ तो it works as a कि लोग देख रहे हैं जो जैसे कि फ्रंट देखा that's so little
किसी ने भी मुझे नहीं ऐसे कुछ पढ़े हो हाथ में लेके
वही कि लोग ऐसे जा रहे हैं देख रहे हैं no one is like इतना इंटरेस्टेड कि आगे कुछ है it's like work as a flash but जो एक क्लोज ग्रुप है which has जानते हैं या फिर देखा है तो ये will come.
Other people are doing it. Not this finish. No, no, finish.
I was asking you, you were only standing on the highways or town में भी कहीं पे जाके
not only highway छोटे रास्ते जो है नाले हैं या different
मतलब हाईवे में तो लोग
Yeah,
चलते ही हैं।
but sometimes people ignore because some things that it is not possible. That's one also they ignore.
No, it
It's not
depends
just
कि
that
कहाँ
the
पे आप
ignorance
खड़े हो।
happens when something ordinary is happening. कुछ ज़्यादा ही extraordinary हो जाता है, that also they ignore. I think
No, I think it depends. अगर तुम यहाँ पे नीचे ना जो मदर डेयरी के सामने ना तुम खड़े हो जाए, people will definitely kill. देखेंगे आगे क्या है, क्या लिखा हुआ है।
ऐसा नहीं कोई नहीं देख रहे
हाँ,
interaction part is very selective. It's not like in terms of talking. वो तो interaction तो खुल गई है अलग सी हो गई कुछ लोग 2 मिनट देखेंगे नहीं कुछ लोग क्या है very interaction है हाँ और तो yeah
जगह जगह पे खड़े हो।
है ना
it's just tough.
हाँ,
उसमें देखने में सही और मैं तो शायद छोटी रिकॉर्डिंग वापस
हाँ,
What?
हाँ,
How could we do that?
हाँ।